I need to finish those. So I live in Illinois, just outside of Chicago, about half an hour, western suburbs. And it is unbelievably hot today. Hence, the more casual dress for today. But that won't stop us. Nothing's going to stop us today. Because today we are making sound gloves. Now I normally promote the heck out of Happy Trooper sound gloves. But he doesn't have many options as far as where to buy. So I thought it'd be nice to have an Amazon option that I know ships worldwide. So that's what we're doing. Today we are making a pair of sound gloves. Let me bring you in, show you what we got, and we'll take it from there. So there's a bunch of different types of boards. The board I went with has 6 contacts, 1 ground, speaker or power in and speaker out. Super easy. It's all screw terminals. It's not even going to be any soldering in this one. Well, there will be, but that's neither here nor there. But super simple. Micro SD card. Put all of our sound fonts on there. Gonna use elastic because I'm making it for Tuskens. Contact switches. The whole thing's gonna be powered by a 9-volt, and put in an Altoids tin because I find it entertaining. We're gonna start pretty easy. I'm making my sound gloves for a Tusken. So I'm using tan. If I were doing like a TIE Pilot or anything weird, I'd probably use black, which I have in case I decided. But I want my sound to come from this hand. Just because I tend to hold weapons with this one. So if I'm holding a gaffy, I don't want to accidentally set everything off. So all I'm going to do is overlap it. This is standard elastic. There's nothing special about it. Some people use gloves. Some people do. I just simple elastic that I can fit my glove over. Always better than anything else. So there's just that much overlap. Not a lot. I'm going to pin it, and then I'm going to do a zigzag stitch all the way around it just to hold it in place. This is the only bit of sewing in the entire project. So it's not, you know, it's not a sewing project. Let's put it that way. So for zigzags on elastic, I tend to go with a much wider stitch and a narrower step and a wider stitch. That way it's got more room in case something flexes weird. Thankfully, that's all the stitching there is to do in the entire project. It's just so it goes over my hand and keeps my buttons in place. If you look, it's not even a great stitch, just a zigzag to hold everything in place. So it can, since it's a zigzag, I can stretch it. I don't have to worry about it snapping. There's going to be a lot of hand sewing though, because that's where we are now. We are at the hand sewing portion of this. Not a lot of hand sewing, just some. Let's get this stuff out of the way real quick. Move my sewing machine. No reason to keep it out. One of y'all said something the other day. It was, I don't put things down, I put them away. And it's a fundamental shift in thinking. And it's a small, interesting habit that really kind of stuck with me. So I do listen to all the comments, by the way, and I'm trying to incorporate that a little more in my life. So now we're moving on to hand stitching. Super easy, right? All I gotta do is, here, we'll do it the easy way. Wherever I want a button, I'm gonna put a pin. And I'm gonna put the head of the pin where I want the button to be. Looks like they're almost evenly spaced. Help if I wouldn't stab myself in the hand with my stupid pins, huh? So, see right? Each finger rests right about there. It's gonna be different for everybody's hand. Thread. I put the thread away. Wasn't quite ready for that. Luckily these contacts I'm using all have holes drilled into them, which is gonna make sewing these on so much easier. I find 3 loops on something like this tends to be just enough. There's no reason to, you know, go crazy with it. You can if you want. If you want to put like 17 loops in, knock yourself out. I don't like hand stitching. I don't like sewing. I don't like cleaning. I'm really not a big fan of stuff, I guess. I like making things, making a mess. I'm good at making messes. And a means to an end. So now each of these buttons has 3 points of contact, and there's going to be 3 spots I stitch. If you look, each one of these has a hole that it goes through. That is perfect for stitching through. I don't believe it was intended for that, but you know, if it works, right? So the first one of these we made, I believe we just hot glued everything in place, and it worked fantastic. We have recently misplaced it, so I'm making a new one. And honestly, these things, super easy to make, relatively inexpensive. Speaking of cost, the links, this is very similar to Happy Trooper's tutorial, and he did an amazing job with it. I still recommend people go watch. Whenever anybody asks me about sound gloves, I forward them to that guy. He did a great job. His links are still mostly active, and there's a couple of things, but I wanted to update where to purchase most of this stuff more than anything else. Because sound gloves are cool and all, but if you can't buy the pieces, there's no point. And there are 2 different options that I'm probably going to put down below. I'm going to do the Amazon, because, you know, everybody does Amazon. Amazon's easy. Amazon ships worldwide. There's rarely any issues. You don't have to, you know, no customs problems. You don't have to wait too long. And then there's Aliexpress. Aliexpress is straight from China and takes forever to get, but is considerably cheap. So, you know, there is that. Contact feels pretty good. All right, I'm gonna bring you in so you can see how I'm sewing these. Do I want to do strain relief here? Yeah, I do. So I stopped using, I'm gonna use a bunch of buzzwords here. I stopped using Cartesian style 3D printers because I don't like the bed moving back and forth, right? Most heat beds don't have any form of strain relief. It moves back and forth. It wears out at that point. That's the weak point in that style of 3D printer. And since I've recently switched to Core XY, which is where the bed stays still and the top moves around all cool like, I've gotten really obsessed with strain relief because I made most of my printer, and my favorite one was my Hypercube just because it was neat and I fully made it myself, you know? I've been obsessed with strain relief lately because of it, so I'm adding an extra stitch just to make sure there's no stress on these wires. I don't want to go through all the trouble to have a wire get ripped out and then I'll have to solder it, you know? The less I solder, the happier, because like everything else, I hate soldering too. What of this hobby do I enjoy? I enjoy the thought of it, you know? Thought that I have built this thing and I'm accurate. I enjoy the pride I get when I do a project well. And I do enjoy the projects when I'm done. Just getting there. Nobody really enjoys sewing, right? Some people have weird hang-ups that let them enjoy hand stitching, or, you know, some people I suppose like sewing. I'm not one of those people, but there's something to be said for sewing. And there's parts, like I know people who absolutely love hand sanding. And that's, oh my God, that drives me crazy, right? There's nothing wrong if that's what brings you here, is I like to hand sand, right? There's nothing wrong with, I'm not fond of sewing. Sewing is a means to an end for me. I'm very, very good at it, and I've been doing it for a very, very long time. But in the end, it's a means to an end, you know? That's kind of what most of this is. None of us like building the costumes. We like wearing the costumes. I love going to a convention, have someone shout, can I take a picture? And we're like, yeah, of course, come on in, we take a picture, you know? That's the part that everybody likes. This is just how we get. So, I'm gonna bring you in so you can see me hand stitch a thing. I tend to do about my wingspan, by the way, as far as length of thread goes. Everything is nice and secure. I really like how it feels. Mine is gonna live in a pouch on my waist pouch, right? So I need to measure out, because I'm gonna have to make the leads a little longer. From here, right there. So since I have 3 of them, I'm gonna need 3 lengths of wire that long. You can just wire nut these, by the way, or twist them and use electrical tape or whatever you want. I'm gonna solder mine, just if I'm here I might as well. This wire is super thin, so I can even do that. I have 3 even lengths of wire. So I'm gonna set everything up, solder these leads on, and I'm just taking 1 full strand. I'm gonna solder the 2 ends together. I may show you how I do that, but we'll figure it out. Put things away, don't put them down. all this out of the way and do one at a time, focusing on just this one right now. Nothing else seems to matter. I'd say altogether it's about 1/2 inch. Again, since these aren't polarity specific, it doesn't really matter. This one I can cut. Which side is negative and which side is positive, as long as one side gets a negative and one gets a positive. I'm forgetting something. Where are my heat shrink? You can always use electrical tape. You don't have to use heat shrink. I prefer heat shrink just because. You know, if I'm going to the effort of soldering, the least I can do is heat shrink it. So these helping hand things, right? They hold everything in place so you can use both your hands. I should pick one of those up. I have not yet. Apply heat, apply some solder. Doesn't take a lot. I tend to fold one side up, that's very warm still. Put the heat shrink over, fold the other side in the opposite direction, put the heat shrink over, and then just heat it. A lot of people use lighters. Lighters drive me crazy. So the smart thing to do, not catch your table on fire, is to have soldered everything first and then heat shrunk. So the next one, I'm going to solder both ends up, both leads up, heat shrink everything. So I'll bring you in so you can see, so you can have my view with this process. I did it. Soldered this one. Completely forgot to put electrical tape on, or a heat shrink on. So we're going to use electrical tape. This is solely keep the wires separate. It's an electrical insulator. It's not going to hold the joint together. It's not going to do any of that jazz. It just keeps things from touching. I want to use as little as possible, so don't make a big bulky thing in the middle. That's it. Pretty easy. Not too bad. You probably didn't catch any of that. So we're gonna take everything off and re-show you. Take one strip, loop it around, put the second one on, and then just roll it tight. I'm not worried about how well everything stays together because the whole thing is going to be in one large heat shrink tube, which is where we're at next. We've got all this tangled mess, right? If you don't have heat shrink tube, you could easily just wrap the whole thing in something. This stuff is super inexpensive and saves so much time, effort, headache, you know, the whole deal. So I'm gonna go here, so I have plenty of room left. This is gonna be snug because I didn't calculate for the thicker wire. Why would I? That would require forethought. Let me do these in two separate pieces. So the more I feed this in, the more friction it's gonna create. Because I have multiple, I'm gonna feed them in at different lengths. That should alleviate some of the problem. Right here, so we're almost there. Easy solution is to get a little bit bigger heat shrink tubing. Like I said, I did not calculate for the larger tubing, I calculated for the thin stuff up here. So now I'm using that sticktivity it has to my advantage by feeding the next piece in, and it's going to want to stick to the like materials more than the dissimilar materials. Idea. I'll be right back. There. Now, just slide that in. So the shortest of the three will be the lead right here. That didn't work. I could twist them together, that would also help, but we're at this point now where I don't want to. So in the end, it's just going to take me forever. I'm just going to slowly work my way through this thing. So for this part, I had larger heat shrink lying around, but this part, I did manage to get this to work, and here's how I did it, right? Feed one piece all the way through. I'm using smaller pieces because smaller pieces are easy to pull through. That's the second piece through. Second piece actually goes through pretty easy. Well, easy might not be the right term, but you know what I mean. Goes through well enough. It's a slow process. Now that it comes through, pull them both through. All right. So I'm going to wedge this one in between these two. Push, nice and easy. Pull, nice and easy, right? And at this point, it's just a matter of feeding a little bit at a time. And I know exactly this is the one I'm trying to feed in. So I pulled this one back down. Oh, it'll come down. Just take our time, move slow. Since I'm only feeding a little bit at a time, it's a bit easier. So part of the problem is the heat from my hand is enough to tighten the shrink tubing just enough that this becomes really annoying. So now we're going to try and slide the whole thing down without pulling this one out, which is way easier to say than do. I figured this would be a problem. Like I said, it's very hot out today. Far enough that I'm just ripping this to shreds as I'm trying to pull it. I may have been a little ambitious with the amount of heat shrink I pulled off. Now this is just 2 of them, and it's still, now at this point it is fused. Let's go with new tubing, about 1 foot at a time. Yeah, I'll have a bunch of pieces, but if it works, I don't care if I have a bunch of pieces. Long one in, and then the last one. So part of the problem with using longer pieces is I run out of room to pull before I run out of a wire. Or I run out of wire before I run out of room to pull. Should be right there. Unfortunately, you can't just put the stuff in the freezer and expand it. That'd be neat. Hey, check it out. I could just leave this a little bit. I'm not going to, but I could. Well, let's see where we're at. So my 3 buttons. I'm probably about there. I could stop at this point. I may. I don't know. I also have that wrapping kind if I wanted to. I'd rather not. So always make sure you calculate for the largest possible wire you're going to be using. And for me, 3/16 is a little too small. Probably should have gone 1/4 inch. So this is making my lights flicker, by the way, which is why I've been doing most of this off camera. So I could go half the distance. That's about how it works, you know. Half the distance I can feed each one in without fighting too much. I'm sure there's a way to tie a string to the thing and do it that way too. Or cut these so one's way longer than the other and you can just pull one side and it'll pull both since they're attached. It could have just been done. But no. So in the end, little bits, small at a time, small at a time. There are days where it's real hard to do this thing, right? Where it's the end of the week, I've got like a day and a half to make a video, put everything up, and then in the end, maybe 20 people watch it. It'd be nice if more people watched my videos. I'd like that. I feel like I'm actually doing a thing, right? But for the 20 that do watch, I do what I can. Alright, I'm going to heat shrink this, and then we're going to go over the electronics, which are dead simple. So let me take care of this real quick. So the electronics seem a little daunting at first. It's actually really quite easy. First thing I'm going to do, since my Altoids tin is metal, I don't want it to conduct anything in the bottom of my, traces to connect or any of that jazz. I'm going to take some EVA foam, thin stuff, and I'm going to trace the outside of this tin. Then I'm going to cut a little on the inside. Not much, just a little. Just enough so it fits inside. Luckily foam collapses, so if it's a little big, it'll fit. Perfect, right? Fantastic insulative layer. It's also the exact inside of my case, so I know exactly where I can put all of my components. The only components I have to worry about, the battery pack and the board. Now that I know where I'm going to want all of this, I'm going to worry about the board first. The board's got a couple interesting points, right? This one in particular, everything is labeled on the back. Ground and then P1 through 6 are up here. On this particular board, the ground is this last one, the one closest to the memory card, and then the rest are just each 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. This is my power in, and then this is my speaker out. First thing I'm going to do is line everything up where I want it to be. I think I want it like this, so the memory card is facing the inside of the tin. You know what I can do? I don't know why I'm trying to do this the hard way. I have a drill bit. Let's drill a bit. Let's drill a hole. So if I drill my hole, or mark out my hole I should say, in the foam, then I can put the foam back in the Altoids tin and drill everything out properly. And I don't have to worry about accidentally drilling through my board. So now I know exactly where all my holes go. Yeah. I like that. I get a piece of lumber to drill into. We recently cleaned the garage and burned all the lumber. So it's a little hard finding stuff. It should be perfect. which means I should probably go size up with the drill, but I'm not gonna. So I'm not sure what size bolt I need to use, but I'm gonna find the longest one that still lets this lid close. These are just random M3 bolts, by the way. There's nothing overtly special about them. That should be perfect. So what I've done, I have 4 bolts, or 4 bolts and 8 nuts. So I put 2 nuts in to hold these in place, right? And then I used some lock nuts just as spacers. I could have put a spacer in, I could have used regular nuts too. I had lock nuts, which is why I used those. That keeps the board slightly elevated, which, you know, makes it easier to get stuff in and out anyway. So now that we're at the point where we're about to start doing stuff, let me bring you over to my side, or at least point you down so you can see what I'm doing. Couple simple things. This is an RCA splitter. I'm using a splitter instead of the one I'm going to put in the links just because I'm making 2 of them and it's cheaper just to buy a splitter. I mean, this was just a little splitter I picked up from Home Depot. So like I said, cheap splitter from Menards. With the board in place, my feeds are going to come in on this side and I want my audio to come out on this side. So I'm going to drill 2 holes in the very top without the board in. Now this bit might not be large enough for all of the wires, because I need these 3. No, I think I may do from the side and do 2 of them. Ginger, careful. Drill your hole. This is probably not large enough, so we're going to expand it. I really wish I had grommets I could put on these. I don't have any. They're not expensive. They're not difficult to find. That's pretty much the end of that statement. Alright, because these will cut you right fast and in a hurry. So the little flashing I want to pull off. I'm going to drill another hole on the side for the buttons that go on top. I do 2 different buttons. I like buttons in my hand for conversational Tusken, and then for random songs like the Mandalorian theme or the Book of Boba Fett or the Cantina song. Cantina song's always good to get the Jawas up and running, all excited like. That should be about it for all the holes we need to drill in the tin itself. These are my speaker wires. We'll start with those. Like I said, I just took an RCA splitter, put the positives together and the negatives on its own. Then I'm gonna move everything in, slide that up and heat seal it. But since I'm having the terminal exposed, I want to make sure when I add my heat shrink that it's far enough in that I don't have to worry about anything weird. So like how this sticks out just a touch too much, I don't like that. That's gonna cause problems. So I am going to cut that off right now. In this situation, any extra exposed copper, not my friend. So since I didn't want this shoring out against anything, I put a piece of heat shrink here, but I didn't shrink it yet because I wanted to flush everything up and then turn it on, or then heat it, I mean. That's all it takes. Audio is connected. Albeit not very well, but still connected. Power, I'm using a 9 volt. I'm gonna split this, fold it over. I want a little more meat for the screw to bite into. These are pole specific. Positive goes here, negative goes in the other one. I prefer solder joints to the screw-on terminals, but I figured since I'm doing it for everybody, I should, you know, do it the easiest way for everyone else. So I want all these to be about the same length. All right, I gotta go grab the thing. I'll be right back. So I wanted to get my voltmeter because I want to know which order to put these in. They're all wrapped up, they're all lost, so they could be anything, right? Easy way to find out. My voltmeter, as do most voltmeters, has a continuity tester. On mine, it's that button right there. So beep. Suppose I could just do it the easy way. So this is my first one. This is 1. Realizing I have no way to mark these. Just put them in. It's been a day, right? So the whole point of giving myself extra room underneath it is so I can feed things in as needed. Now for number 2. Okay, so this is 2 and this is 3. I could tin these, you know, put solder on them. It would probably make all of this a bit easier, but then, you know, I have to deal with my soldering station again. I'm not in the mood to solder. I'm in the mood to fight. And then 3. Just from process of elimination, but we're gonna test it anyway. Because we're testing, might as well test them all. Okay. That is indeed number 3. So now I have these other 3 buttons to pull out. And I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm just gonna feed them through the hole, wire them up in order, and then all the negatives together. Doesn't matter which side is negative on these, so I'm just gonna pick one. You don't need to watch me for all of that. I don't even need to watch me for all of this. Now let's just shove everything in. The negative on this has 6 of them, and it is hard to fight with. When you order these, they show up like this, right? With thinner wires. It's way easier to do everything that as opposed to fighting with this stupid thing. I should just unscrew it and put it in when I'm done. Once I do this, everything else kind of just falls into place. It's never easy, right? We set things up so they'd be easy, and the next thing you know, bam! Nope, it's not easy. I think my negative lead just came undone too. So I'm having nothing but problems with this negative lead. The negative lead, since it's 6 of them all wrapped together, 3 of those 6 are huge. It just doesn't want to do its thing. The nice thing is once it's in, I don't have to mess with it again. I'm thinking about drilling a hole in the side and just taking this straight through, which would solve a lot of my problem. I may just do that. The only part I'm fighting with is this right here. So the smart thing to do would be to take it out, mark it, drill a new hole. A little forethought beforehand probably could have solved that, but you know, hindsight and all that jazz. It would appear my work surface has done gone and exploded on me again. So I've got everything apart. Let's see if we can fix this problem with all these negatives. The problem is that there's too many of them. Pull these through. I may be able to separate the positives and the negatives, bridge these all together outside. That way I'm only feeding in 1 wire instead of 3. Alright, a minute ago I thought I was done. It's amazing how much of a difference a minute makes. When I started this project, everything was nice and neat and orderly. Now, not so much. That's why cleaning as you go is important. I'm looking for these. You see these anywhere? Should be in a bag, like this. Found some. Luckily, I don't need to put it on just yet. So this is the exact reason I didn't put my soldering station away. I now have 1 more soldering to do. Over all of it, where there was once 3 wires, there is now 1. I should put something right here over the whole thing. I don't know if I have anything wide enough to go over everything. It's the right thing to do. Doesn't matter whether it pushes me back or not, right? It's all a learning experience for Kim's anyway. So I want to make sure I get hers perfect. I'm a good husband. And my wife's Tusken Raider sound gloves are more important than mine. That's a joke about the dichotomy of me and my wife, by the way. Alright, let's try this again. Alright, now to add my speaker attachment. Grab some snips, I'll be right back. And by snips I of course meant side cutters. Nice perfect holes everywhere. All the way up until I get to the audio, then I'm like, to heck with it. So we're going to do the easy or the hard one first. And the easy one. So I think the major takeaway at this point is to make sure you have the right parts, because the ones in the description are the right parts. They didn't show up, so I had to go get not the right parts. Probably put a bunch of hot glue right there just to make sure everything stays in line. Almost done. I made it this time. This is a rechargeable 9-volt battery. I have only ever been able to find rechargeable 9-volt batteries from Aliexpress. So I'm just going to put a hot glue, hold this stupid thing in place. I should shorten these, would make my life much easier. Not gonna. I will on Kim's. If this were going to be, like Kim's is on her arm, and if I were to do that, I would definitely make these wires shorter. This is going to live in a bag, so I'm a lot less worried about it. Alright, that's it. Probably wrap these up, maybe glue them underneath, just so they're out of the way. But yeah, we're done. Real quick though, took a waste pouch, cut some foam. That's important, right? Because that's going to put everything neatly inside one of my pouches. Then that'll go up, and that's it. Shove it back in the pouch. So there we are. That's it, right? I've got it neatly tucked in my pouch. Simple push of a button. If I want to be a little fancy, easy. It's simple. All the links are in the description. It adds an extra layer to your costume that is fantastic. Give it a shot. See you next week.